Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about the convening of a grand jury. We now know at DOJ. Normally, I would give the facts, maybe give you my reaction, and have it somewhat muted. I'm starting with my reaction here. This is the biggest load of politicized horseshit that we've seen so far out of the DOJ. All right, this concerns the complete crazy, psychotic, thoughtless accusations by one Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, that Barack Obama, Clapper, Brennan, the entire national intelligence staff of the United States manufactured the claims in a intelligence assessment in 2016 that Russians were mucking around in the election and were doing it in order to favor Donald Trump. Okay, let's just start with that finding. The finding was made then. The finding never has been refuted. The finding is taken as completely solid to this day within the intelligence community. However, for total thoughtless acolytes of Donald Trump, the finding is inconvenient because it suggests that one reason for his 2016 surprise victory over Hillary Clinton was the Russians finagling in stuff. And it also does the administration, and especially Tulsi Gabbard, claim that the whole thing is made up by whom? Obama, for starters. And by the way, Tulsi Gabbard, when she says this, has said that she believes Obama is guilty of treason, a crime punishable by death under the Constitution, and that consists of giving aid and comfort to an enemy with whom we are at war. That is not Russia anyway, anyhow. But this nutwing puts out a report and shows up last week in the White House briefing room to level these allegations against Obama, among others. Dems at the time said they're trying to change the subject from Epstein. Of course, there's a lot of things that's happening for that you could say. But this particular, if that's what it is, I mean, it doesn't even matter. This particular little nastygram is from another friggin' solar system. Here's what Tulsi Gabbard said in the briefing room of the White House last week. There is irrefutable evidence that details how President Obama and his national security team directed the creation of an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false. Man, oh man, those are some extremely strong words. Among other things, while not treason, it would be a serious crime. I can think of 2 or 3, but it would just be, so complete, sort of abject misleading of the whole society in a democracy. You couldn't do this in a democracy with any sort of honor or credibility, but that's her claim. They knew that they were directing the creation of an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false. And that's what she says. And then she puts out this report saying new evidence of Obama administration conspiracy to subvert President Trump's 2000 victory and presidency. On Friday, she said that in the months leading up to 2016, they assessed that Russia is probably not trying to influence well, I'm going to stop here and take a step back and say that all of this garbage, which as far as I can tell has been reported on Fox News without any kind of pushback or analytical friction or reflection, is all about this. We had this very important assessment in 2016. To this day, the intelligence community stands behind it. there are teeny little things, one involving how much authority or credibility a particular source should have had. Another involving the question of the difference between saying, as they did, there is no evidence that Russia parachuted in and changed the votes on machines. Yeah, but that in no way negatives the idea that Russia came in, had all these social media, mischievous tweets meant to rile up, very sort of clever and dastardly, meant to rile up Trump supporters, some, phony products of Hillary Clinton and the like, completely meant to, exactly as the intelligence estimate said in 2016 and all the way through, to put a thumb on the scale for Donald Trump, which is whom they preferred, even though it's a narrative that obviously makes Trump wig out. And in his complete indifference to the truth, which we most recently just saw, just did a YouTube with Rich Bernstein about the firing of the person based on the statistics that he just didn't like in a labor report, but that of course were accurate. The same arch Orwellian idea. Don't shoot the messenger, just take the messenger and, shoot, of course, and dispose of, but then completely twist the truth and begin to act as if it's facts. So, to hear Gabbard talk and to hear the grand narrative here, you would think the accusation is, oh no, the Russians didn't come in and try to help Donald Trump, etc. And what's really happening is massaging of a few different statements that have to do with fine points and nuances of this still solid, reliable assessment. So, for example, we have an effort in 2017 that she says directly contradicted the previous assessments. That's just wrong. They had, little kind of adjustments, etc. Okay, so that whole thing is horseshit. But the thing that made me, blow my gasket up the top of this tape, they're convening a grand jury. They're pursuing criminal charges against Clapper and Brennan and maybe Obama for somehow, what? Let's say it had been true. You try to even think about what these morons, or not morons, the legal term, assholes, could be thinking of. And okay, so let's say it was totally cooked up, a big lie, etc., to influence the election. That could be a crime. It could be one of the crimes that were charged against Trump, 18 U.S.C. 371, a conspiracy against the United States. You can imagine a fraud scheme or a false statement, but there ain't nothing in there remotely like that. And even if there were, the thought of, taking the obvious, dutiful examination of intelligence findings, letting Trump know about them. Remember, early before he even came into office, letting American people know about them to some extent, having the American people told truthfully, again I say truthfully, that Russia tried to interfere in the election and in favor of Donald Trump. And then to take that, try to twist it bad, and indict someone for it, a public servant, Brennan Clapper. At the best, they got to get lawyers. They got to spend a lot of money. They got to defend themselves against, crazies on Fox News and who knows what in the American public. And it is all, I think I mentioned this already, 100% horseshit. So this is about as bad. When we're now talking about, they've done all kinds of terrible things with extant cases, with prosecutors, etc. But now literally to gin up a grand jury to consider. And once, of course, a grand jury, is convened, it's very much in the control of the prosecutor what happens. But to even consider criminal charges against these public servants whom no one has ever disparaged until now, That's like authoritarianism 101. That is Putin, right? That is, take our political enemies who were political officials and make them miserable, potentially throw them in jail. It is just raw, gutter, bottom feeding, maggot, disgusting horseshit. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.